On the outskirts of an old desert town, where the winds carried both dust and whispers, lived a tailor named Zuhair. His hands were skillful, his needle sharp, yet his pockets were never heavy. Life had taught him to measure cloth and also to measure hunger. With the day's labor behind him, Zuhair drifted into the twilight lanes, where playful children leapt barefoot and laughter danced upon the air. Among them was a boy named Hisham, whose eyes gleamed with curiosity, though his stomach often groaned with emptiness. One afternoon, Zuhair passed the bakery of Amirah, a widow who kneaded dough with tired but hopeful fingers. Her bread was golden, its aroma a melody of warmth, yet many who passed her stall could not afford even a crumb. Zuhair stood watching as Hisham lingered nearby, staring at the bread as though it were a dream he dared not touch. Zuhair's heart trembled. He reached into his small pouch and found only 2 silver coins, the last of his earnings that week. For a moment, the whisper of self-preservation spoke. "Save them, Zuhair. You too must eat tomorrow." But another voice, softer yet more radiant, rose in his chest. It was the echo of a hadith he once heard from his grandfather, spoken with reverence. "The charity you give will be your shade on the day of judgment." The words rang in his soul like a bell, reverberating through the corridors of his conscience. Shade on the day when no shade would exist except by Allah's mercy. What gift could be greater? With trembling resolve, Zuhair bought bread from Amirah, handing the warm loaf to Hisham. The boy's eyes widened, his small hands clutching it as if it were treasure fallen from the sky. "For me," he whispered. Zuhair only smiled, brushing the boy's hair as the desert breeze carried away his silence. Days turned into weeks. Zuhair's life remained simple, yet every act of kindness seemed to ripple through the town. Hisham, nourished by bread and kindness, grew stronger and began helping Amirah in her bakery, carrying baskets and learning her craft. Amirah, in turn, sewed for Zuhair a robe when his old one grew too thin, saying it was payment for his heart rather than his coin. The town began to notice how a single loaf given in charity had woven threads between lives, binding them like a tapestry of compassion. Years later, when Zuhair's beard had turned white like the moon over the desert, he sat by the mosque courtyard. Children gathered around him, including Hisham, now a grown man, speaking of mercy, hope, and faith. Zuhair repeated often the hadith that had guided his life. "The charity you give will be your shade on the day of judgment." And as the children listened with wide eyes, they imagined a great day, scorching and blinding, where people ran seeking refuge. Yet some stood beneath vast trees of light, their shade grown from coins, bread, words, and smiles they had once given in secret. Zuhair looked at the horizon with peace, knowing that perhaps his shade was already planted, waiting for him in the eternal garden of mercy.